Why does God allow suffering? Many people ask that question, and others say, well, there is no God, because if there was a God, he would not allow suffering. But why do people suffer? What is suffering? Well, we all suffer in different ways. We might get divorced, or we might feel rejection, or a loss of job, or live in a family where there is domestic abuse. We're afraid of our father, or there might be domestic violence. We are traumatized as children. And so suffering is poverty, expressed in many ways. Accident, being paralyzed, loss of life, loss of someone you love. Is there a possibility that we can end suffering? Well, I don't think so. Suffering always existed. But what is suffering? Now, I've studied Spinoza for the last over 40 years, and I've learned that I've suffered. I've come from a family that, unfortunately, there was domestic violence. I was afraid of my father. There was a lot of drugs abuse and violence. I would say it wasn't normal. Now, there was an individual, her name is Dr. Shivali. She's a clinical psychologist, a family therapist. She wrote a book called The Conscious Parent. I highly recommend it for those who are interested in learning how to parent, because as a parent, you're applying your knowledge that you've acquired from the environment you grew up in. And that knowledge is limited. You may have read many books, but yet, when you have an infant in your arms, a newborn, and you went through a lot of pain delivering that child, a pain that no man, cannot comprehend. My partner is a small woman, a beautiful woman, and she had over a 9-pound child in that little frame. Unbelievable. But yet, that's a different kind of pain, suffering. But the suffering that most people experience are losses, or rejection, or situations like lose a house and a fire. A hurricane could destroy everything. So suffering basically is pain. And pain, in Spinoza's terms, is a decrease of perfection. What does that mean, decrease of perfection? Well, to Spinoza, perfection and reality are synonymous. So when we are in pain, we are not able to perform an action. We're not living in reality. I'll give you another example. This morning I had a conversation with my partner, Margaret. And she is feeling anxious, anxiety, pain. So anxiety is also pain. We have fear. We're uncertain about the future. Or we have a friend who's having a lot of health problems. And Margaret, one of her cousins, had just had an operation, cancer, second operation, and her husband rejects her and denies that she has a problem. And so Margaret gives her advice. It probably might be a good idea to leave her husband because he doesn't respect her, doesn't support her. But how can her friend, or her cousin, her name is Mary, how can Mary change direction of her life? Because right now she desperately needs her husband. And Mary cannot make any kind of decisions, rational decisions, because now her mind is becoming very weak. She's in her 70s. And so we can see we suffer in many ways, loss of job. So I talked to Margaret and I said, you know what we need to do? I said, let's do this. Acknowledge that you want to help your cousin Mary. But in reality, you can't do anything. Mary has to decide what she can do. She has to come to her own reality. and acknowledge that she is helpless, powerless, and not knowing what to do. Now, how do we handle this pain within us? The first thing is to acknowledge it. The feeling of pain is feeling of powerlessness and helplessness and not knowing what to do. Now, if you begin to journal this, write your feelings down. This is a big step to begin to look at your feelings and your emotions. Now, this is